Good afternoon, you bastards, and welcome back to What I Know with Koala. So, I've been strapped for time lately. I've been a busy boy, which has meant that I haven't really been able to play the new content of Update 1.89 all that much. I'm working on a video on the Hunter F6 and the A2D Skyshack. I just haven't had time to gather all of the footage yet. So those videos will be out soon enough, but today we're talking about something that's been quite a talking point over the last couple of months, the M1A1HA, or the M1A1 Abrams Heavy Armour variant. Now, this tank is obviously not in the game yet, just this, the regular old M1A1, and no announcement has been made, as far as I know, that it is coming to the game, but I think most of us are convinced that it soon will, in order to balance out the Leopard 2A5 and Series 1 Leclerc, both of which are better than the regular M1A1. Actually, it does kind of really make me question Gaijin that all of our Tier 7 tanks, even the 2A5 and Leclerc, still only sit at 10.0, as if they're literally no improvement over the 2A4 or M1. Get off your asses and fix that, please, Gaijin. It takes 10 minutes. Also, if you're noticing the glitchy grass textures in this gameplay, that's been happening to me for several weeks now. It's actually the reason you lads haven't really seen much in the way of tank gameplay from me over the past couple of months. I'm not sure why it's happening, or how I might fix it. I've tried different graphic settings, messing around with my hardware. It's definitely not a hardware problem on my end, at least not one that I can see any evidence of. So if anyone else has been getting that flickering grass, or if you know how I might fix it, then please let me know down in the comments. Now, the M1A1 is by no means a bad tank. I know it gets bashed a lot as being kind of a letdown at Tier 7, and like I said, it is only third best. The Leopard 2A5 and Leclerc S1 have really come into the game too soon. Oh. Almost messed up there. But the M1A1 is third best. It's a very good tank, and in this match against both the Leopard 2A5 and T80U and Tunguska, as well as Mi-35s, we managed to get 11 kills. Still didn't win though. You know what they say, expect nothing, still be disappointed. This match was actually recorded last patch, which means no Leclercs on the enemy team, but it also means no Bradats or Stormers on ours, so the enemy are going to have a lot more control of the skies, and that's probably what won them the game. At the time I played this match, I was specifically focusing on grinding out helicopters, making my way down to the AH-1F, the helicopter used in the Persian Gulf War, alongside M1A1s and M1A1HAs. Anyway, messed up my first shot on that Leopard 2K there, and didn't get the chance to fire back at him, even though my cannon barrel wasn't actually dead when we fired, but blame Ping for that one. I decided instead of waiting for the repair that I'd just bail out and jump into the Huey. So anyway, the M1A1HA, the tank we're actually here to talk about. The M1 Abrams, as we know, first saw production in 1979 with its 105mm barrel being improved upon with the IP M1 as of 1984. The M1A1 with the Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore gun, the M256, began rolling off production lines in 1986, and in 1988, right as the German armed forces were taking delivery of Leopard 2A4s with C-Tech armour and DM-33 shells, the first Abrams tanks with depleted uranium armour were being produced, designated M1A1HA for heavy armour. These tanks then saw use in the Persian Gulf and proved extremely effective against Iraqi forces alongside some of their older brothers, the M1A1, and even some models of the IP M1. Surprisingly enough, these weren't even the oldest American tanks that served in that conflict. The M60A1 RISCP and the M60A3, and even the Vietnam-era M163 Vulcan Air Defense System, or VADS, all saw use in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. The HA variant of the Abrams saw the removal of a layer of its standard Chauben composite armour from the turret in order to fit into the turret cheeks a layer of DU meshed composite, which did slightly lower the chemical protection of the vehicle down to around 950mm from 1100, but raised its protection against kinetic energy munitions from the roughly 440mm we currently see in War Thunder to 600mm. This armour type is the first generation of depleted uranium meshed armour, which was then upgraded to second generation DU on the M1A1HC and the M1A2 Abrams, and third generation for the M1A2's system enhancement package. What you may find interesting, however, is that second gen DU armour actually does not offer up any additional protection over the first gen DU. The M1A1HC and the M1A2 retain that armour value of 600mm KE. And nor is it true, that common misconception, that these tanks added depleted uranium into the hull as well. No Abrams has ever featured depleted uranium armour inserts into the hull until the very new M1A2 SEP V3 or M1A2C. Third generation DU does improve upon the protection levels by around 10%, and probably, although don't quote me on this, but I would suspect that it would also bring those chemical protection levels up to the standard that Chobham armour had achieved with the non-DU meshed M1A1. So, to focus on the game, check this out. I've pulled up in the Huey near ground level, took off from the helipad, not using the air start in order to avoid Tunguskas, and I've spotted an Mi-35 hovering a few kilometres away. So I fired a tow at him, but I couldn't unfortunately get the helicopter looking that far up while hovering, but our second and third missiles, yeah, they both look like they should have hit him. Let's check the replay. Yep, this is the second missile I fired. Right through him. Soviet helicopters apparently have phase technology. And now for the third tow. Yeah, 2 ghost shells, or ghost missiles. As Mags would say, Gaijin, fix your shit. For fuck's sakes. Anyway, after that, all I did was relocate behind the enemy tank spawn to get some ATGMs off using the cliffs for cover, hoping that no Tunguskas would notice me. 3 guesses how that's going to work. So anyway, I was talking before about 1st, 2nd and 3rd gen depleted uranium armour. What 2nd gen DU is designed to improve upon is the integrity of the armour. In real life, the more shells hit a piece of armour, the weaker that armour becomes. So an M1A1HA shell with 560mm penetration at point blank range is not going to penetrate the turret of an M1A1HA on the first hit, probably not even the 2nd or 3rd. But on the 4th shot, there's a fair chance that it will, because every round that slams into that armour weakens it further and further. 2nd gen DU is designed to be less susceptible to this effect, and it also most likely defeats the Soviet 3BM42 Mango shell, which could penetrate the M1A1HA with 1st gen DU from point blank range, but not the M1A1HC or M1A2 with 2nd gen DU, as the armour's integrity would defeat the benefits of Mango's multi-core construction. Besides that, no differences in protection. We don't see things like armour weakening with multiple shots in War Thunder, nor do we see a realistic portrayal of 3BM42, which only has around 450mm penetration against RHA, but should, and does realistically, have far more than that against composite armour arrays, allowing it to once again penetrate even the 600mm effective M1A1HA turret from close enough range. It wouldn't do this in War Thunder, however, given the performance that Gaijin's given the shell in game, which is a far cry from realism. By the way, if you're questioning how I'm sourcing these values, I'm cross-referencing between a bunch of different sources, such as German records, US Department of Defense records, British files, and the infamous Swedish tank trials of the early 90s, which some people have been throwing some shade at recently, even though it literally makes no sense to do so. I've been given these sources by different people, engineers, manufacturers, even M1A2 commanders, Leopard 2 crewmen, Challenger 2 crewmen, as well as people who have studied this topic for years and are subject matter experts, and some of this data people have even had to pay to access. I'm then cross-referencing the data collected from those sources to make sure that everything checks out, which, well, it does. These are basically the closest to accurate records of these values that we have, and are likely to ever have until the official values are declassified in some few decades, and you cannot disprove the most credible source that exists. So no, the Swedish trials are not perfect, they're not 100% accurate, but they're more accurate than any other sources out there, and therefore have to be taken as accurate. They're not more than 30 to 50mm off anyway. So if you're going to tell me that they're wrong and then quote Steel Beasts and Wikipedia values, or Tank Encyclopedia, or Jane's values at me, saying that the M1A2 has 900mm kinetic effective armour, yeah, can you see the problem with that? Because these are the most accurate representations we have access to date, this is how the M1A1HA would be represented in War Thunder either way. So the main question when talking about the M1A1HA is what form would it be likely to come into the game in, whether it should be a separate tier 7 tank in the US tech tree, costing another almost 400,000 research points and a whole other stock grind, or whether it should be an upgrade modification for the existing M1A1. In my opinion, and I want to preface everything I say henceforth by saying that it is only my opinion and you're welcome to have a different one, but my opinion is that the M1A1HA must be introduced as a completely separate vehicle, following on from the M1A1. It would slightly render the M1A1 obsolete, but no more so than the Leopard 2A4 is now obsolete, no more so than the T-80B is now obsolete. See what I mean? Actually, we're going to come back to both of those examples in a minute. Now, the depleted uranium armour added to the Abrams with the M1A1HA variant increased the weight of the tank by some 5 tons, decreasing both its top speed and power to weight ratios, which would change the performance of the vehicle in-game, change its playstyle. Obviously, the addition of enough armour to reliably defeat shells like DM33, even if it had its realistic penetration value of 533mm, and even OFL 120F1 and 3BM42 in War Thunder with their in-game penetration levels, as well as M829 and M829A1, L26A1, and even L27A1 if it were added, which I believe it should be, would also change the tank's overall playstyle and effectiveness, which creates the necessity for it being a separate vehicle. If you're miffed by the idea of having to grind out a whole other top tier vehicle, be sure to note that your lineup is accordingly improved. For any other players of other nations worried about this, however, I do also think that the Leopard 2A4 with C-Tech armour and the T80BV with its 5-layer composite armour array should both be added. The C-Tech Leopard 2A4 is really the tank that should have been added back in update 1.87. It has 550mm kinetic energy armour, it would have been impenetrable anyway, but not quite as horrendously overpowered as the 2A5 is now, to the point where it's ended up with a ridiculous 26 grand repair cost, which basically kills any chances I had of really wanting to play it. But the main reason I believe that the DU Abrams should be a separate tank and not a module is that unlike the addition of Contact 1 explosive reactive armor to the T64B or T80B, something many people have been using as an argument for why DU armor should be added as an upgrade for the existing tank, this is not a simple modification to an existing tank in real life, not one that can be done out in the field. The M1A1HA has to be produced as a separate vehicle in real life, and for an M1A1 to be upgraded to HA standard is a far more complicated procedure than attaching some ERA plates, meaning the conversion would have to be done in a warehouse or factory, or on a production line. Oh, by the way, now check out this. I've spawned in the FJ4 rather than the F100 because I get access to 5 AGM-12B bullpups, and I thought, you know what, maybe this can help us deal with Tunguskas from long range. Spot an enemy target, move in to engage, end up starving myself of fuel. But as I'm maneuvering down to try and engage this, I believe it's a MiG-15. Yeah. This is balanced. But back to what I was saying before, the M1A1HA compared to the M1A1, this is not a modification, it's a complete overhaul of the turret of the tank, more comparable to what the Leopard 2A5 is to the C-Tech armoured Leopard 2A4. This is the same reason that while Contact 1 ERA is an upgrade module for tanks like the T64B or T80B in-game, Contact 5 Heavy ERA comes with its own separate vehicle, the T80U, because it requires more extensive work to the vehicle to add on in real life than Contact 1 does. Now, the T80U does see one other difference over the T80B in-game, and that is what I mentioned before, the 5-layer composite armour design seen on the 1985 T80BV. Something I've also suggested be added in the past. For those of you who remember, I suggested that if the IPM-1 received the M833 and M900 shells, then the 5-layer T80BV with a shell like 3BM32 Vant could match up to it quite well. Similarly, the underlying turret of the Leopard 2A5 is not quite the same as the C-Tech Leopard 2A4 turret, because the gunner's optic had to be moved to sit completely above the turret in order to put on the arrowhead piece. Actually, the addition or removal of the arrowhead of the Leopard 2A5 is a less extensive modification than the addition of DU armor to the M1A1 to convert it into an HA model. So if you're saying that the M1A1HA should be a modification for the M1A1, then by that same logic, we should see the Leopard 2A5 being a modification for the C-Tech Leopard 2A4, and the T80U being a modification for the 5-layer T80BV. Now, I don't think either of those two suggestions would actually be appreciated, and the same should be the case for the M1A1HA. And there's the end of that game. Couldn't quite finish off that ASU-57 get the cheeky revenge in time, but oh well, a nice game, and even though we were playing top tier America and using the full extent of our lineup, we managed to make a nice 30 grand. But my point is that Contact 1 is a module for tanks like the T80B, not, as some of you might say, because it makes very little difference in game and therefore isn't worthy of being a separate tank, but because it is a field modification for the tank, something that can be attached by relatively inexperienced crews in 30 minutes, not an extensive work to the vehicle that must be done on a production line by experienced manufacturers or engineers. This is why the Russian tanks get their Contact 1 ERA as an upgrade module, while the M60 Rise and AMX-30 Brennus are separate tanks to their older counterparts without that ERA. It actually makes a lot of sense for this to be the case, despite some claims that it's somehow unfair. What also supports the addition of the M1A1HA as a separate tank is the Challenger 1 Mark III, which improves upon the Mark II in no way bar the addition of the armour package, which could be fitted to the Mark II anyway. I honestly would have preferred, and I suggested this before, having the Challenger 1 Mark I with only L23 as its top shell at BR 9.3, and the Challenger 1 Mark III with the additional armour package being an upgrade module because it is more comparable to Contact 1 in that it can be applied out in the field, and its top shell being the depleted Uranium L26 Jericho, potentially even at BR 10.0, but that is beside the point. For a difference to the vehicle as significant as the M1A1HA is to the M1A1, it would make no sense to add it as an upgrade modification, especially when creating the visual model of the new tank would require no changes, and only the internal armour modelling would actually need to be changed. That would be very similar to making the Leopard 2A5 an upgrade to the CTEC Leopard 2A4, the T80U an upgrade to the T80BV, or the IPM1 an upgrade to the M1, another existing example that sets the precedent for the HA as a separate tank to the M1A1. It's likely that this tank would receive the M829A1 Silver Bullet DU APFSD shell fired in the Gulf Wars, but I believe that the M1A1 should have this shell already anyway, with M829, a shell that never needed to be fired from the Abrams, becoming the new stock shell. This is all stuff that I've gone over before, so I'll link you onto my video series detailing modern tanks like the M1A2 or T90M in War Thunder and how I believe they should be added. I went into a lot of detail and laid out full tech trees there, so I highly recommend you lads go check it out if you have questions, because I probably already answered them in those videos. But anyway, the main point of this video was to talk about the M1A1HA and why I believe it must be added as a standalone tank from our current M1A1 and not relegated to being added as an upgrade module. I think I've done that, and I hope you lads can see my point and understand why I disagree with the idea that it should come as a modification. I don't think that it will either. As I said, it makes no sense to me, but if you're of a different opinion, then you're of course welcome to that. I don't wish to attack anybody who has a different opinion to me, I'm just putting mine out there. If you have a different one, then I'll admit I don't understand your reasoning behind it, but that's okay, you may just think and feel differently to me, and perhaps I've managed to change your mind here. Either way, I hope you lads have enjoyed this video, and that if you did, you leave a like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, join the 360 squad, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Come follow me on Twitter and Twitch, join the Discord, and check out Patreon if you wish to support the channel further. You can also join the channel with a membership here on YouTube now, so if you do want to do that, then just know that I hugely appreciate your support, and I could not keep this channel going without it. Anyway, thank you lads all so much for watching, have a lovely good day, and always remember, keep your bagpipes to hand, keep your kilt on, and I shall see you in the next one. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. Captain Fubar, DA261, Gisli Gadarson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bra. If you wish to join them, come check out the link in the description below.